My goal is to achieve both speed and attractiveness, and I am hoping that I have sufficient horsepower. A slick automobile design that I am going to do all in my power to get out from under him as quickly as I can. Should the worst case situation occur, I might as well have T-Top's ejecto SEO if I am required to weld the door shut again. The world of Big Chief was not all grandeur and fast automobiles, rather it was full with accidents, criminal activity, and mayhem. Not only was the man who dominated the streets on Street Outlaws a legend behind the wheel, but he was also evading the authorities at the same time. His background is equally as chaotic as the races he won, ranging from a hit-and-run accident when he was just 18 years old, to arrests for racing, driving citations, and even a tax scam involving $1 million. Be sure to tune in because the most shocking revelation of all is still to come. Quick automobiles, quick cash, and a mistake that cost $1 million. Everyone who is interested in street racing is familiar with the moniker Big Chief, and he is the face that has made Street Outlaws what it is today. However, what if what you believed you understood turned out to be simply a portion of the whole picture? The individual who is responsible for the mythology, Justin Shearer, has a history that is not just comprised of high-octane thrills and celebrity on television. A reality that has been buried behind the sound of the engines, waiting for the moment when it can no longer be ignored for any longer. Since he was a little child, Big Chief has had an insatiable need for speed. He was born in the rolling hills of Louisville, Kentucky, in the year 1980. Around the time that he came to Oklahoma in 1992, when he was just 9 years old, he had already developed an obsession with the underground street racing culture. His youthful mind would daydream about the day when he would be the one behind the wheel of a vehicle and he would ride his bike out to Old Route 66 simply to watch the action. It was a dream come true, but not without a few significant detours and turns along the road. It is plain to see components are beginning to break, automobiles are not performing as they are meant to, everyone is so pumped up, and nobody is working as hard as the 405 to travel down roadways at the moment. Justin was already well known in various ways prior to the success of Street Outlaws, which brought him to the attention of the general public. When he was just 18 years old, he made his first significant error into adulthood. In the month of February in the year 1998, he found himself in the middle of a hit-and-run accident. It was in Oklahoma that he fled the site of the crime rather than waiting for the authorities to arrive. That makes a significant error. Despite the fact that the law requires you to remain in your current location following an accident, Chief did not remain for that. As soon as the dust settled, he was confronted with the real potential of spending 2 years in prison. It was fortunate for him that he was able to avoid any significant time this time. After some time had passed, in the year 2001, he was once again apprehended and placed in custody in the state of Oklahoma. What are the fees? The specific circumstances are unknown, but it is certain that they were serious enough to lock him up for a period of time. After that, which was just 5 years later, he was captured once more speeding through Flagstaff, Arizona, at speeds exceeding 85 miles per hour. Either he was racing, he was trying out a new riding, or he was just trying to test his luck. Regardless of what it was, the cops were not going to tolerate it. Every time you get a ticket, you get in trouble with the law. Having said that, this was only the beginning. During the time when Big Chief was going through his list of traffic offenses, the Discovery Channel came to visit. All of a sudden, the illegal street racing that had been going on was being videotaped for millions at the time. However, let us be honest, was it actually against the law? On the contrary. However, it turns out that the entire event was a hoax. Despite the fact that the highways were closed, the police were aware of the situation, and the alleged encounters with the authorities were fabricated. In order to give the impression to the viewers that they were receiving the genuine article, everything was done for the cameras. However, here's the thing, Big Chief was not finished getting into trouble when the camera was not on him. He was issued yet another ticket for speeding in 2018, this time in Springfield, Missouri. This time the ticket was issued to him. At Midwest Street Cars he found contentment inside the limits of his garage. Not only is this a place of employment, but it is also a secure haven where he and his better half could go to escape the trouble that was still on the way by the year 2021. The fact that he was pulled over in Canadian Oklahoma for having a license plate that had expired was a minor offense, but at this point in time his record was not looking like it was going to be anything but minor. Then came the most serious offense, which was driving while having a license that had been suspended. It is important to note that this was not the first time that Chief had his license revoked. During the course of the broadcast, he had even joked about the fact that he was driving around without any tags, no bill of sale, and no legitimate license. He had even discussed it further. Being apprehended, however, that was something fresh. This time he was facing a possible sentence of 1 year in prison. One would assume that would be sufficient, wouldn't you agree? On the other hand, if there is one thing that Big Chief enjoys more than speed, it is evading the Internal Revenue Service. The United States federal government came knocking on the door in 2021, and they were not looking for a favor. It became out that Chief had failed to file his taxes from 2013 to 2018, which coincided with the time when Street Outlaws was experiencing meteoric growth. What about the bill? A mind-boggling sum of $1,270,000. Additionally, when the Internal Revenue Service comes to collect on your behalf, they do not only beg gently, rather they take what they are entitled to. Nothing is off-limits, including automobiles, homes, and bank accounts. If he does not make the payment by the year 2029, he may end up losing everything. Additionally, just when you thought that Big Chief's history was already rather crazy, there is still another tale that is just waiting to be told. There is a legacy that will not be forgotten, despite the fact that the name is not as widely known. Designed to triumph but ultimately failed to do so. Is it something you've ever observed that certain people only become renowned after they have passed away? This is the case with artists such as Johann Sebastian Bach and Vincent van Gogh, as well as authors such as Emily Dickinson and Herman Melville, and even Bruce Lee in the field of film. Now, for those of you who are interested in auto racing, I am Tyler Flip. I like it. The name of this individual is not precisely well known unless you are deeply involved in street racing, yet he has left his imprint. Flip was an active participant in the Oklahoma racing scene, participating in races with the lads who would go on to become reality television stars. He was able to tear up the streets despite having a car that appeared to be a mess, a positive mindset, and the abilities necessary to do so. However, here is the catch: by the time Street Outlaws was broadcast on television, Flip had already passed away, and the circumstances surrounding his passing are still unknown. Allow me to break it down for you. In 2013, the Discovery Channel introduced a show called Street Outlaws, which provided viewers with an inside look into illegal street racing and the individuals who were responsible for making it all happen. The purpose of this article is to provide a concise overview of their shared interest in the specialized field of tuning, with a particular emphasis on the captivating world of Caddy Jack. The program features a number of the most prominent figures in the industry, as well as a lot of drama and outrageous automotive modifications. Big Chief, whose real name is Justin Shearer, and Kamikaze, whose real name is Chris Day, are two examples of individuals who have built a reputation for themselves. But do you know what happened to their friend Flip? He ought to have been a more significant figure. As a member of the initial crew of Oklahoma street racers, Flip was present from the very beginning of the competition. It was a beat-up 1980 Chevrolet El Camino, sometimes known as the Elko, or its more colorful label, the Old. He had a beast of an automobile named the Elko on his vehicle. This device was cobbled together using everything Flip could scrounge or steal, with the intention of putting it together. Although it appeared to be tough, it was really rather quick. Moreover, the individual has a distinct personality, as he consistently carried a drink in one hand and a cigarette in the other, and he never hesitated to engage in a smack talk. Exactly the type of person who would be a fantastic television host. But Flip was never able to experience the glory of that stardom since he passed away just before the episode was broadcast. In Chickasha, Oklahoma, on November 30th, 1981, Tyler Jean Pretty was blessed with the gift of life. The fact that he comes from a region with such a long history of racing is more than a little bit appropriate. When he was young, his father, who was also into drag racing, inspired him to develop a passion for automobiles. He was raised with Big Chief and Kamikaze, and from the time they were little, all three of them were passionate about automobiles. They were riding bicycles together to observe races, gaining as much knowledge as they could, and finally bringing them to the scene themselves. After completing his education, obtaining a job, and living a regular life for a period of time, Flip followed the typical route. He began his career as a storekeeper before securing a position at Warren Caterpillar, where he was employed for a period of 10 years straight. But the ambition was always to compete in races. A few of his events were even sponsored by Caterpillar, which was a very cool thing to think about. In addition to talking about racing, he also participated in it. His El Camino was built with every spare dime he had, and it was designed to be as quick and as shady as possible. Your mother is now the name of a vehicle, not a person who drives it. If he is going to call his vehicle your mom, then it had better be a very foolish and fast vehicle. To tell you the truth, those who made the joke that it was kept together with duct tape were not entirely off base. Guess what, however? Flip became well known in the world of underground racing as a result of the victory of that car. At this point, things start to become unclear. Flip took his own life on May 28, 2013, when he was just 31 years old, although nobody truly knows what caused his death. What are the official particulars? However, he passed away at his residence in Yukon, Oklahoma. This is when things start to get complicated. Some people believe that it was a wound caused by a firearm. Morgan, his wife, subsequently made a veiled reference to the fact that he suffered with depression. However, this has not been proven. There were also other tales that circulated, such as the possibility that there was an accident, the utilization of alcohol, or something else different. His family and the producers of the program have chosen to remain silent, which is their right, but this silence has only served to increase the amount of speculation that people have. In spite of the fact that Flip was never able to witness the incredible rise in popularity of Street Outlaws, his legacy is still a part of the program. Big Chief, his closest buddy, made certain that it did not vanish while they were traveling along the El Camino. Before handing the automobile over to Kamikaze, Big Chief remained in possession of it for a period of time. That made perfect sense, given that Kamikaze and Flip had been buddies since they were children. He also raced the Elko for a number of years, during which time he took care of it and upgraded it. On the other hand, the automobile was involved in a terrible collision in February of 2021. After Kamikaze lost control of the Elko, the frame of the vehicle was reduced to a charred mess when the dust fell. In a normal situation, we would never go on a car like this since it is a race car. It is made of fiberglass, it has enormous tires, and it has a large motor. However, we are eager to take on the task. In the aftermath of that, Kamikaze parted with a few of its components, including wheel, a tire, and even a portion of the brake rotor. In a short amount of time, fans picked them up, with bids reaching more than $110,000. It was even speculated that if the amount reached $225,000, Kamikaze would deliver a steak meal to the winner while dressed in his racing outfit. I have no idea if that truly took place, but if it did, that is a supper that will stick with you forever. In an effort to preserve the legacy of Flip, Kamikaze constructed a new automobile, a Chevrolet Corvette C5, by utilizing components from the L. Despite the fact that it was not the same, it was a means for him to carry on the legacy of his friend. Additionally, if the reports are accurate, it is possible that another Elko is now in the process of being developed. Not only did Flip leave behind a renowned automobile, but he also had a family to leave behind. Morgan Amber Pretty, his widow, continues to commemorate him throughout her life, even going so far as to get a winged skull tattoo in his remembrance. Together they were blessed with 4 children, each of whom had a moniker that was as distinctive as their father's automobile. Toy Jean, Remy J., Dresden Wren and Bennett William, and on May 28th of each year, admirers honor Flip by taking a minute to reflect on his life. The fact that Big Chief and Kamikaze continue to keep his memory alive on Street Outlaws ensures that his name is still spoken. Even if he was not present to take pleasure in the limelight, Flip is still a significant figure in the history of racing. He was a man who lived life to the fullest. He constructed an automobile that was a monster, and he made sure that his name was never forgotten. That comes close to being the epitome of legendary status. Some racers develop their names only on the basis of their speed, while others carve out their spot in the sport with something more, a combination of their skill, their personalities, and their ability to do things in a unique way. The AZN comes into play at this point. Oklahoma City, a town where highways run on forever and the smell of burning tires never completely disappears, is a place where people have gone from being street hustlers to being TV stars. A young man by the name of Jeff Bonnet was in the process of preparing something truly remarkable. In this land of speedy automobiles and lofty aspirations, AZN, the person that is often loitering around farm truck on Street Outlaws, is probably the name that most people prefer to use to refer to him. Some people believe that he is nothing more than a sidekick, but there is a great deal more to his narrative than simply being close to a man who is driving a rusty truck. Jeff was born in the early 1980s, and he was raised in an environment where the sound of revving engines and late-night street races were ubiquitous. Dennis, Jeff's father, was the sort of man who knew his way around a wrench, and he made sure that Jeff grew up in the same manner as his father. The two of them worked on a rusty old 1964 Chevrolet Nova, which was a car that Jeff had borrowed from his father when he was just a high school boy with no money. I have no work and no money, but I have an intense desire to make that automobile mine. For the sole purpose of repaying his father, he decided to become creative and began painting house numbers on curbs in order to earn a few cash. However, just because someone decorated a few sidewalks does not mean that they will become a racing legend. Not only did Jeff have a passion for speed, but he also desired to do more than just play about with the engine. During that time, he came into contact with Sean Whitley, also known as Farm Truck, the one who would ultimately transform his life. While the man was already a formidable competitor in the Oklahoma racing scene, Jeff was only a young man seeking to establish himself as a contender. Almost immediately, they were inseparable due to the fact that something clicked between them. While some of the other racers were out here purchasing the quickest and most costly muscle vehicle, Jeff was among those who were not. What he had in mind was different. In 1970, he purchased a Volkswagen Beetle. It is a bug. Undoubtedly, this is not the type of vehicle that people anticipate seeing blasting up a drag strip. On the other hand, Jeff was not one to always fall. He transformed that pathetically little, rusted and stupid automobile into something that was capable of competing with the big guys. Oh, that may have led to a crash. I am sorry that I let people down. It is the one thing I wish I hadn't done. Not only did people refer to it as the Dung Beetle, but it also became an integral part of his identity, just like his trash talk. Jeff was not interested in acquiring trophies, in contrast to the other racers, who were more concerned with demonstrating who was the quickest. He and Farm Truck were more concerned with simply having fun. In spite of their peculiarity and unpredictability, they were able to produce competent automobiles.
In spite of the fact that this outcome made them fan favorites, it also meant that they were not precisely considered to be serious challengers. They were finally brought to the attention of the people behind Street Outlaws, and in the year 2013, Jeff and Farm Truck were given the opportunity to become famous on television. Although they did not win every race, they were clearly the ones who made everyone laugh. They were the ones that won. Jeff had a knack for energizing the atmosphere, talking trash, and maintaining the momentum of the event. Individuals adored it. However, in the realm of drag racing, the ability to amuse individuals is not necessarily sufficient to keep them on the track. It was not Jeff's intention to race in a manner that was designed for direct competitiveness. The dung beetle was quick, but it was not going to be able to win any triumphs in the imminent future. The creators of the program encountered a challenge as a result of this. In the end, viewers tune in to see racers compete against one another, and not only for the sake of amusement. With the passage of time, Jeff and Farm Truck began to be excluded from competitions. There are others who believe that the producers just wanted to concentrate on the contestants who were competing for the top slot, while others believe that it was because they were not serious enough about winning. In either case, Jeff and Farm Truck needed to determine what their next step would be. They changed the course of events so that they would not be relegated to the background. They would proceed in a completely different manner if they were unable to compete in the same manner as the others. After that, they were given their very own spin-off, which was called Street Outlaws. Farm Truck and AZ